Hey, beautiful people. I want to talk about training, officer training in the prison system. How important, it is for officers to receive, good training, proper training, you know, knowing how to do the job the right way. I can tell you, for a fact that not all officers are corrupt. That's in policing and prison system, jailers, you name it. There are a lot of good officers, in these organizations. It's just overshadowed by these bad apples that's out there doing all this crazy stuff that's going on today. You still have, a lot of good officers, patrolling the streets, and, walking them blocks, in the prisons. You just do. And, I think a lot of the problem is the lack of training, you know, and the way you end up in that particular situation, you know, is for a couple of reasons. You got people, and I'll even, I'll call a spade a spade. Sometimes the powers that be, they make the wrong decisions. When they promoting people, you know, they promote people that they like, and not always people that's qualified for the position. It happens, all over, in the corporate world, all of that. You get it, and that's a recipe for disaster, and most of the time. But in the prison system, it's very dangerous. It's very dangerous because if you promote somebody in the prison system that's inexperienced and put him in a position to be training people, guess what you're gonna get? You're gonna get an officer who was trained by an inexperienced person, and when he turn him loose, he's gonna still be inexperienced. He's not gonna know everything he needs to know, and that's gonna get him in trouble. You know, which is what I want to talk about today. So we started this program in the prison system called the Mentor Program, and the Mentor Program is where you take a veteran officer, and he is the mentor. So anytime we get a new hire, a new officer, then they're assigned to that veteran officer for 8 weeks. So for 8 weeks, he's gonna get on the job training. He's gonna teach him policy, front to back, and he's going to walk him through everything, from face to face with inmates, dealing with the everyday routine that we have, you know, and he'll be trained in every post in that prison. Now, on any given night, you can be assigned to work, in different areas. And so he will be trained in every area. But in this particular job, experience trumps, you know, liking some damn body. You know, it just does. Because when you put somebody in that position, just because you like them, you know, that's not fair to the people that's going to be working with that individual. Because he is still going to be inexperienced. He is still going to be in a position to put you in a dangerous situation because of what he doesn't know. And see, one thing I can promise you, inmates are going to test you. If you're a new officer just starting, they're going to test you to see just how much you know. And the minute they find out that you don't know your job, they're going to manipulate you at every chance they get. And they're going to pass that on. So no matter where you work in that prison, they're going to already know you don't know what the hell you're doing. They're going to be telling you stuff that you're supposed to be doing because they know policy better than staff do. Sure they do. Them guys sit around 24/7. That's all they got. They ain't got nothing else to do. Is to figure out ways to manipulate staff. You know, they try to poke holes in the system all the time. That's what they do. So if you take officers and you train, and you putting them with somebody that's, he ain't gonna train them what they need to know. He gonna train them what he want them to know because that's all he know. And so my story, is when I went up for the mentor program, there was a new officer. He was fairly new. He had about 18 months in the system. I think I was sitting at 6 years, and they promoted him over me in the position. And I knew he was one of their favorites. I knew he was one of the guys they liked. But I didn't think that would make a difference. I didn't think that would matter, to be honest with you. And so I just decided, hey, this was out of my control. Wasn't nothing I could do about it. It is what it is. But we'll see what happens. And so on this particular night, he was teaching the new officer how to do locker searches. And so I was working in a population building, and they came over, and they was on my end of the building. I was a control center officer. You have a control center officer, and then you have 2 dormitory officers. You have 4 blocks, 2 on each side. And so we required to do 2 locker searches per dorm. So because he was training this individual, he just picked a random dorm, and he went in and he was going to teach him how to do locker searches. Now, the thing about that, is if you're going to teach, a new officer how to do locker searches, you got to use some common sense. You got 34 inmates in that block. Most of them are in the day room watching TV, playing cards, playing board games, or just sitting around talking or whatever. In the bed area, you can't hang out in the bed area. There's no hanging around in the bed area. You either in the bed sleep or you in the day room. So when they go in, he see all these inmates. They walking around. They doing whatever they're doing in there. But instead, there's one inmate in the bed, sleep. He goes to the inmate in the bed, wakes him up. He can do it. He can do that. You can wake him up. But now here's where common sense comes into play. When he wakes this inmate up, he tells him to get up. He want to search his locker. So the inmate raises his head and he looks around the block. He scans the block. He notices that he is the only one in there asleep. But so everybody else, that means everybody else is awake. And he even asked him, he said, man, why you waking me up when you got all these guys walking around? You could have just grabbed any one of them to do a locker search. He said, yeah, I could have, but I'm getting you. So now the inmate is pissed. He irate. He jumps off the bunk because he's on the top bunk. It's the bunk. And he opens his locker, and the whole time he's venting. He's mad. He don't understand why he woke him up to do that. So he tells him, to step to the back of the bunk, which when you go in, it's 2 bunks on each side. You have your wall, and then the lockers are sitting there. So once you go in there, the only way out is the way you came in. So the 2 officers go in. The mentor is showing the officer how to search things in the locker, what to look for, what's contraband, what's not contraband, the whole 9. And so he pulls a old pill bottle that the inmate had, that he probably had some Vaseline or some lotion or something in it. And he tells him, I'm going to confiscate this. And the inmate says, no, you're not. He said, yes, I am. The inmate said, no, you're not. He said, yes, I am. So at this point, The officer is basically getting ready to bag that, that contraband. He's getting ready to bag it. And as he's proceeding to put the bottle in the bag, the inmate walks up and tries to slap it out of his hand by telling him, I said, no, you're not. So instead, he slapped the officer on the hand. The officer says, you do realize you just assaulted me, right? So the inmate, now he's just, he's already crossed that line. Once he did that, he knew he had already crossed that line. And so he says, if you think that's assault, watch this. And before the officer could do anything, boom, he was on him. He grabbed him in the throat, he choking the officer, got him pinned against the wall. The officer's trying to get his pepper spray out. The new officer is just frozen. First day on the job. He don't know what to do. So the inmate comes off of he releases the officer, he backs off, and at this point the officer gets his pepper spray out. But in the blocks, right, we have these big industrial fans that blow across your body. So it was blowing across the bed area. So if he'd have sprayed his pepper spray, it would have just blew into the bed area. It would have never reached the inmate. So now he hesitates. He got a pepper spray out. He holding the pepper spray, hesitating. The inmate realizes he can't shoot him. So boom, he rushes him again, grabs him in the throat, choking the officer again. At this point, the new officer runs out of the block. Big mistake. Runs out of the block, leaves the officer now in there to fight for his life. He runs out to the control center where me and another officer is, and he calls for help. So when we enter the block, we already got our pepper spray out, and the inmate, he see us coming, he backs up, turns around, faces the wall, because he's already accomplished what he set out to do. So we cuff him up, taking the segregation. New officer is visibly shaken. So at the time we approached, we called the code 4. Code 4 is the code for disturbance. That means officers and staff gonna come from everywhere. So now everybody comes to the scene. He's, like I said, he's visibly shaken. We get him out the block, get him in the control center. At that point, that adrenaline is pumping. Everything is, he's just out of his mind. Because he wasn't ready for that. So they have to take him to medical. Have to take him to the hospital, get him evaluated. All of that stuff, just protocol. And so, of course, the inmate, he called a street charge, for assault. But let me tell you why that was so dangerous. Because if that inmate would have had a shank, just imagine that. Think about that for a minute. Instead of choking him, he'd have been stabbing him. That officer doesn't realize how lucky he was that night. But I go back to what I said before, a little bit of common sense will take you a long way. All he had to do was grab somebody that was up and moving. And guess what? He can get in there, train that officer on how to do a proper locker search. It would have been over with and done. He wouldn't have had no problem, no assault, no drama, no, not anything. And so here's where things got, a little heated. So the next day, we're in lineup. So when we go in lineup, it's just lineup is held just like you see it on TV. All of us in the room. They pass any information that needs to be passed. And then you'll get assigned your posts and stuff. So in this particular night, the lieutenant stood there, and he goes, "I just want to commend Officer so-and-so last night." And he's talking about the officer that got assaulted now, for doing such a good job, and that situation that he was in, and he did everything right, and And so after he finished talking, he says, "Has anybody got anything?" So I raised my hand and I said, "Lieutenant, I don't mean no disrespect." I said, "But I disagree with everything you just said." I said, "Because he didn't do nothing right last night." I said, "He put himself in danger. He put a new officer in danger. And that inmate was also put in danger." I said, "Now for you to stand there and say that," and we had 4 of the new officers in the room, in the lineup. I said, "You are leading these guys to believe that what happened last night is the way it's supposed to happen. He did everything right." I said, "That's no." I said, "No." I said, "I'm sorry. I can't stand here and let that go." And of course, he didn't like that. He broke line up. And everybody kind of went their separate ways. But now the officer that got assaulted was also there. He came back to work. He was there. And he pulled me to the side and he said, "I appreciate you doing that." He said, "Because you're right." He said, "I didn't do anything right last night." He said, I should have went and got somebody else instead of waking that guy up." He turned out to be a very good officer. Sometimes, it takes something like that, to kind of wake you up, and make you understand that, this is the type of job where you got to have the proper training to do this job. Because if not, you can end up, in that situation. You can break that code that we had a code, not that blue code shit, you see police officers have, no. Our code was, we gonna leave that prison the same way we came in, walking. Nobody's getting carried out of here on a gurney. In order to do that, you had to be able to work together, to accomplish that. And so I think he understood, that no matter, how much you liked, by the powers that be and all that stuff, they're not in those blocks with you. They're not walking those cells with you. You know what I'm saying? Those officers that you walking side by side with, those are the ones you got to count on to have your back. And it took being in that system for a minute for a lot of veteran officers, that understood that. They got that. They know, hey, I don't give a damn about whether or not you like me, but my fellow officer that I work side by side with, that's in the trenches with me, that's who I want. That's who I respect. Because that person is the one got to have my back. If something go down in here, if we gotta do what we gotta do, you want to have somebody that's reliable. So that's my whole take on experience, man. You gotta have proper training. You can't be making up shit. That'll get you killed. Prison system ain't nothing to play with. So I say this, I say this again. I know that there's a lot of crazy stuff going on out there with these officers, these police officers, these, even in the prisons, I know it is, but, people, it's a lot of good officers out there. I was one of them. I did 24 years, in the prison system. I don't regret one day. I was not, an officer who the inmates hated and anything like that. Inmates respected me because I respected them. In prison, that's all it takes, for you to go in there and do your 12-hour shift, and have a decent night. Because on any given night, you might catch him, he might even got some bad news from home, anything can happen, So if you got a population of 300 or 1,000 inmates, yeah, all of them ain't gonna be in a good mood every day. You're gonna have your days where, you got to deal with somebody. That's just the nature of the beast. But for the most part, I can tell you this, and any ex-convict watching this video will tell you, they will respect you more if you do your job. If you know your job and you do your job, they will respect you. You know, as long as you give them the same respect, you get what you give in the prison system. And you have to understand where you are. You know, because yes, the lions and tigers and bears is in there. We ain't even talking about the monsters yet, because there's some monsters in there too. I'm going to get to that. But anyway, hit that like button, you know, subscribe, hit that little notification bell, you know, so y'all get the next video that I drop. Hey, until the next video, peace.